everyone, and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players of the gigging variety. I'm your host, David Holloway, and it's brilliant as always to be here with you. And I have with me the erudite Mr. Paul Bindig. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm going great. Thanks, David. I'm really looking forward to this episode of the podcast.
Yeah, now I know quite often I say, we're going to do something slightly different, but this is definitely up there as far as different interviews. So we're going to spend some time in this first of two parts talking to Mr. Bobby Cressey. And as you'll hear in this part, Bobby has had an amazing career, and a significant component of which is his role as the organ player for the San Diego Padres baseball team, amongst other teams. So we're going to devote this first part of the interview to talking about how that works. And as non-Americans and not having watched a lot of baseball, I've found it fascinating. But for those of you that follow baseball, you'll probably find it even more fascinating. So, Paul, I think this is a fun one to listen to.
Yeah, look, and I really enjoy American sport, but as you just said, David, even if you're just interested in how would that work, how would someone play organ live during a sports tournament, and how does that work, and what are you expected to do? It's really quite fascinating, even
It
if you're not
is.
a massive sports fan yourself.
Yeah, no. So we hope you enjoy it. It's well worth a listen, and we'll see you back for part two. Bobby, so brilliant to have you here. And as you can see, in dedication to a part of our topic today, we've gotten in the mood with our backgrounds.
That's brilliant. I was shocked when I logged on and saw that you guys had baseball backgrounds. Although, that's not a baseball stadium that you're in, is that?
Well,
What is
I'll
that?
be honest. I did Google baseball game, and it's a diamond.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is. Okay. It looks like kind of like a soccer
Yeah.
stadium, actually, or a
I
football,
think it's just a weird angle.
like American football, but it's just the
That's
angle.
right.
Yeah.
No,
All
I
right.
really appreciate
All
it.
right.
So, as our guests are here, you've had quite the career, and baseball's only one aspect. But I thought we'd kick off just with the usual question of what got you into music in the first place, Bobby? What was your formative experiences that made you the player you are today?
Wow. Well, what got me in the first place was, I suppose, just being around it growing up. I had parents who led a choir at our Catholic church. My dad played his little acoustic guitar. My mom sang. And so I was always around it, playing this, being exposed to that. And they were always listening to things like Peter, Paul, and Mary and John Denver and music that's actually like quite boring. As I think back on it, I think, man, I wish that we could have listened to some Earth, Wind, and Fire instead of all that music. Maybe I would have better feel and time in my playing if I was raised on more of that music. But so music was always around, and my parents were both musicians. I'm not professional, but not amateur. You know what I mean? Like they were playing at church, but they weren't making money doing it. But and then from there, I guess all my siblings took piano lessons, but my three older sisters, none of them really took to it, but I did slowly, but I enjoyed it. And I remember even early on, around Christmas time, my mom was my first teacher, and she just taught me very basics like Middle C and its near neighbors, one of the Thompson like primary books. But I remember digging out my sister's Bastion, like level 1 Christmas. I must have been 9 or 10. And it was level 1, level 2. So it was a bit above me. There was like things in D major with key signatures. And I remember even then being like, hey, I think I can figure this out, and spending hours trying to teach myself how to play these like dead simple tunes. So I guess I always gravitated towards the music early on. And then it wasn't until high school, though, when I actually started listening to the jazz station and really starting to think, man, I really would like to know what they're doing. It's something really appealed to me about jazz and classical at the same time. Actually, it was high school. Classical music, which was my piano lessons, and then jazz at the same time. Both of those things came into my life, and I started to kind of go off the deep end with them. And, that's where it started. But then I reached a crossroads at when I was going off to university. You have to make the decision then. Am I going to go study music or not? And for me, I decided not to study music because as much as I enjoyed it, I didn't think it was, I didn't consider myself serious enough to really know what it was about to study music. And frankly, I probably didn't know enough about the various options that I would have had. Now that I think about it, I didn't know that there was such a thing as a composition degree or film scoring. Was that even a thing? This would have been 23 years ago, 1999. So, if I had it to do, if I could go talk to myself back then, I might have said, hey, mate, go to music school and study some of these other things. I think I was scared of being a piano performance major. I didn't think I had what it takes to do that. But there's many other things I could have studied. So anyway, I went to university for engineering, structural engineering. And during my time at university down here in San Diego, music really took over my life. So it was a tough go to finish that degree. And I did. It took me 6 years to finish an undergrad engineering degree, and which I have not used since, but because music took over my life in university. And ever since then, it's been off to the races. It's just been music nonstop. And you look back and you realize, I guess this is a bit of a career that I'm having now.
Sure,
I'm too far out from the dock to paddle back, so I better keep going with it.
Oh, absolutely. It's turned into a career for you. And so we're going to cover a lot of that, Bobby. So we will start with the baseball stuff. So you obviously, as Paul's background indicates, you play organ for the San Diego Padres.
Yes,
and you also play for a couple of other teams, the Gulls and the Soccers, which just clarify, that is one of those hockey teams, or are they the next step down in the league sort of teams? Or
that's exactly right. With the Gulls is the minor league team for the Ducks, the Anaheim Ducks, which is NHL. That's like a big, so it's their minor league team, and it's down here in San Diego.
Great.
So 3,000 or so people at games, as opposed to, I don't know, 15,000. Yeah.
And so you've done that since 2010. So how did that first kick off? How did you get that gig in the first place?
Well, the short answer is I always say it's a combination of luck and hustle, which, if you think about anything that you want to accomplish in life, any of the good things that you've gone for and gotten, it's always kind of both of those things, like right place, right time, but then you also have to pursue it. And so that's what happened for me. It was the perfect storm of events in 2010 when I first got that gig. I had just moved back down to San Diego, and I've been in and out of this town my whole life. I lived in Europe for a bit as a kid. I lived in LA. My music career started in LA, but I just moved back down in 2010 to San Diego, where I've been since. And it was because of my wife. We were dating at the time, and I made this big career move down here. But I waltzed into town January of 2010 at no gigs except for one church gig. I got my old church gig back and had a conversation with somebody there. And they said, I heard the Padres are looking for an organ player this year. And when I heard that, as a hungry musician with no gigs, who's always been a baseball fan, a Padres fan, I thought, oh, man, that's a perfect gig for me. Like I had such I had confidence, just a knowledge. I knew that was something I had to do. I had a really good shot of it. So I somehow I ended up right place, right time. I ended up at this little kind of fan fest. They do this like before the season starts. The season starts in the spring in April, but it's just in January. They had a special super fans kind of meeting at the stadium. Like, come on down and we'll just tell you what we're doing for the upcoming season. And maybe you can get some hot dogs and things like that. So there are a few thousand fans there, and just part of the stadium was open. And one of the things they said at that meeting, the CEO of the team, he said, one thing we're going to be doing this year is having throwback Thursdays, which will be day games on a Thursday, and we're going to bring back a live organist for these. And when I heard that, it confirmed what I had just heard from my friend a few weeks ago. Oh, the live organ, they're going to do it. And I knew this was my chance. I was able to walk right up to that CEO, had my card, and I said, hey, I don't know if you have an organist yet, but here's my card. I'd love to do it. And he said, okay. And then he called over a lady. He said, Karen, come here. Give this to Eric about the organist position. So then I stowed that name into my mind, Eric. Okay, I've got to remember who Eric is. So my next order of business, I go home and I Google Padres front office. And the name that pops up, tons of different names, but Eric Meyer, in-game production. I'm like, that's got to be the guy. In-game presentation, something like that. But I knew that was the Eric. So there's no number for him. So I phoned the Padres and I said, may I speak with Eric? And of course they're like, well, okay, here. And they forwarded me to his voicemail. And so I left him a voicemail saying, you got my card. I want to do this gig. And I proceeded to follow up with them. And every couple of weeks I'd give them a phone call, and I didn't want to be too annoying, but I also wanted to tell them I'm quite interested. Didn't hear from them, made a demo tape and sent it in, or maybe a CD. I recorded myself playing a bunch of organ things. Hey. And then so eventually I didn't hear from them until about a week before the season. I thought they had picked someone else. And it was that lady that I'd given my card to. And she said, hey, yeah, sorry, we've just been getting ready for the season. We'd like you to come down and audition. So I was beside myself, and they said, P.S., we don't have anything for you to play, so you have to bring something to audition. So, okay. But it stands to reason they wouldn't just have an organ. They don't have an organist, so why would they have an organ? So I had my motif classic in a case, and I think I might have had a Hammond, like the XM2, the rack, whatever the rack was. I might have brought all that crap down, and I wheeled it across the street to the giant stadium, and somebody met me, and we went into an elevator, down this hall. Next thing you know, I'm in the control room for the whole stadium. It looks out on exactly what your background is, David. That's what I'm looking at. And they said, hey, we'll put you in the whole system. So I set up my rig, and what ensued was one of the strangest experiences of my life in music. They all just looked at me. There was no, well, let's hear what you got, or do this. And thinking back on it, of course, that's how it would have gone down. I didn't think of it at the time. I was bewildered at the time. But if I had known that, think about this. These were not musicians I was playing for. These are entertainment people. And how should I expect them to have some kind of script to follow, you know? So I had to kind of seize the day with it. And I think it didn't go as well as it certainly didn't go as well as it could have. It was actually quite strange. And I think that I didn't quite have take the right tack. I think I was trying to I dressed really cool. I was doing a lot of gigs in LA, hip hop. I was in my late 20s at the time. I was dressed like I was playing with hip hop artists. Like that same year, I played with Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, all these people. I was spending a lot of time in LA around these young cats in that scene. And I kind of brought that energy and kind of dressed way too cool. I should have had like a nerdy polo on, or just like normal dude. What they needed more was like a guy who would work well in an office, the communication skills. So I probably looked strange to them, and I did have to give this impromptu presentation. And I said, well, here are some things you can play. And I played some charges, various dun, dun, duns, things like that. And then I played some tunes. I'm like, hey, people like the Super Mario Brothers theme. And I played that. And then to my horror, as I'm starting this, their attention started drifting elsewhere. Like this is this control room, and they all were kind of busy working on stuff. So at some point, I'm like, who am I even playing for? So it was very strange. But and then it ended, and the lady said, yeah, okay, well, we're going to make our decision by the end of the week. I got no vibes from her. But sure enough, the next week I got a call back, and they were much more chipper voicemail. And they said, yes, we'd like for you to have the gig. So that is the long version of how I got that gig. And I don't always tell that tale in full, but I figure it's interesting for fellow musicians who have found themselves in situations like this before, with auditions or weird chemistry, things like that. Despite all that, I ended up with the gig. I was I was confident I could do it, but was I necessarily qualified? No, because how could I be qualified? I've never done that before.
Yeah. By
the nature of the gig, I don't have previous baseball organist experience. Who does,
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And I think the one of the takeaways from there is you perhaps think you're not impressing people because they're not reacting in a way you might expect, but you obviously were, because they called you back and went, "You're the guy." So that's it's a very cool story. Bobby, can we take a step back? Because this podcast, although the majority of our listeners and viewers are US based, we've got a good chunk of people from other parts of the world where baseball is not as much a part of the sporting psyche and culture as it is in the US. So I was hoping you could share with us just how important the game of baseball is to people in the States, and how big of a deal it is. And then the role of the baseball organist, and why that's so, the tradition of that, and why that's so important as well.
Sure. Well, baseball in America, there's the big three. American football really reigns supreme in this country these days. I don't like American football for a variety of reasons. That's not what we're here to talk about, but it is in terms of money and the Super Bowl. It is like the sport, and it's once a week, right? It's every Sunday for the most part. In the fall, they play 15 games a year or so. But behind that, you've got baseball, and it used to be baseball probably was more the number one sport above even American football, I'd say, for a few reasons. I think one, because it used on the radio, and it's a great radio sport with commentating, and the fact that it's I don't know, there's a word for this where it's plays that start and stop. I mean, if you think cricket, it's similar, right? It's very similar in terms of, all right, play stopped. Now we throw the ball and something happens, and then the play is stopped again. That also is what makes it so. That makes there's cracks there to talk for a commentator. So I think it captivated the hearts of Americans when everybody had a radio, and it's still one of my favorite ways to experience the sport is by radio. But that's also one of the ways that it became a good sport for the organist, which organ came about in, I think it was in the 40s. The Wrigley Field, which is where the Cubs play, Chicago Cubs, they decided to try out installing an organ and see if that would kind of add some pep to the atmosphere. And it's hard for us to picture now, as we've all been to modern sporting events with lots of music and lights and sounds and all of this. It's almost like going to a concert sometimes. But in the 40s, there was no way to have music in the stadium. It's not like they would just needle drop on some Glenn Miller or something. It didn't work that way. I don't think I'm wrong in that. Maybe as I say it, I realize maybe that's not true. Maybe they did have PA speakers blasting out records, but I don't think so. And I think that there were actually some tricky issues with ASCAP and BMI even back then. And I know that I've read articles about the very first organ game that they had organ at. He was only allowed to play, it was either BMI or ASCAP, one of the two, because they had not sorted the licensing out for that. Obviously they've done that since, but something tells me that it was the first time that they had music piped in the whole stadium, and they loved it. It's a very quiet experience, the old games, without any music going on between innings and things like that. So it caught on and it became the rage. I'm sure organs followed quickly in lots of other stadiums, and it was a grand tradition in the States in baseball through the 60s, 70s, 80s. And then around the 90s, they started implementing more of the DJ drops, and was the technology made that possible. And the organist fell out of style. It was still very much in the 80s. If I watched, the Padres went to the World Series in 84, and we had a legendary organist back then. And it is all organist music you hear. And he was playing like Lowry. And it's amazing to hear him make use of those instruments, like all of the bells and whistles on there. For sound effects as well. So they would utilize, and we can talk about different organist rigs of the various organists around the sport, but they will utilize lots of things. They'll do sirens and this and that, pitch bend to do sirens, all kinds of goofy things, antics that they use the organ for. So the organ became a real a way to pep up the games, and not just playing tunes. We talked about the way that the game is broken up. There's 9 innings in baseball. Between those innings, you've got some time to do something, from a goofy hat shuffle to a mascot running around to playing some tunes on the organ. And that's what they did. They used the organ to play between innings, but also they found that during the gameplay, between each play, they could pump up the crowd with charges and chants, the simple bump, 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 little cadences and things like that, shifting the keys, bump, 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 ratcheting up the intensity. And that really caught on. And I don't know the fine history of which exact charges were implemented when. There's a name for those. They call them prompts, actually, in the industry. They say, Bobby, play a prompt here on a foul ball. And that's what that means, to play something like that. And but it worked so well that those stuff stuck around. And so that even to go full circle with it, even if the organist, but a lot of the stadiums don't have a real organist now, but they'll still have recordings of the bump, bump, bump played on an organ. So it's here to stay in the game, like it or not, at least to some degree.
So look, this is a really interesting point you make, that I guess these days it's probably easier to, I don't know, press a button or have a DJ play some canned music. And you mentioned this thing with the Padres started where they were doing a throwback Thursday, where they were going back to the more tradition of the live organ player. Is that something that's maybe taking off around the country and other venues as well to create that I guess that more traditional and special atmosphere?
I think it's had a little bit of a resurgence, not a huge one. There's a few reasons why. Some of us organists have. I got the gig in 2010, and what happened in 2010 was also the advent of social media becoming strong. So some of the organists have kind of created personas. Persona's too strong a word. But they have presences online, followings. If you look at Twitter, my friend Josh Cantor, he's the organist for the Boston Red Sox, and he just tweeted out the other day his list of all the tunes that he played for requests, like 700 tunes this year that he's played. And so I think the teams have realized, oh, like this is an asset. This is part of the game that some people enjoy. And I think maybe some of us organists have smartly realized, like, hey, if we ingratiate ourselves to the fans, we'll stick around longer, because if they get rid of us, the fans will be bummed. That's certainly been my approach. I just from a practical, to be happy and to engage with fans and go the extra mile to make them have a nice time. And so there's a means of self-preservation, So yeah, there's a bit of a human element. And the other thing that makes the people still like about the organ, and that helps us organists to stick around on our gigs, is there are a lot of people who really like the traditional aspect of it, and they feel that it ties them back to going to games as a kid with their grandparents, things like that. Which is a big part of sporting, I think, tradition, and we all, in all of our sports, we can think about watching a game with our mom or dad, or, when we were kids. So that plays a part in that. So many people have told me that. So it's cool to be able to do that. But having said that, it's still not a slam dunk that there's organists. It's not, they haven't brought them back at every stadium, because it is still a bit of a fringe and niche thing. And it costs extra to pay an extra person, or you DJ and an organ, or you just have a DJ. And different entertainment directors have different ideas about what they think is good. Some people want to really go heavy noise, hip hop culture with it. And I've just heard, I just read a report about one team in hockey, and the organs, that may be an even bigger deal in hockey than it is in baseball. This I forget the team, but they had an organist for, it's been like 3 decades or something, and they just cut the organist this upcoming season for the first time in many decades. And why did they do that? Well, basically, the team doesn't have to. They don't have to say much about it. It isn't an organ concert. It's a sporting product, right? They're much more interested, the team, in talking about their players and this and that on-field decisions. They're not going to get peppered with lots of questions about the organist. Now, the vocal minority that does bring it up, well, they'll simply say, well, we're going to try something different this year. And that answer is all you'll really get, So, yeah, but fortunately, I think that we are here to say I think our job is somewhat safe,
No, some great insights there, Bobby. And I suppose that's a good point at which to talk about, what is a game day like for you? How does it start and finish for you as the organ player at a big game?
Well, you cruise into the game a couple hours early. The gates open 2 hours before first pitch, an hour and a half before first pitch, something like that. I think it's 2 hours. The gates open for the fans 2 hours before the game starts. And so I try to get there just a half hour before that. So that's 2.5 hours before. And then I'll have a meeting with the production staff. And it's a big meeting. There's the in-game producer, and this is for entertainment. They call it I guess they call it in-game presentation. There's a director, there's a camera director, switcher, There's all the cameramen for the whole stadium are there in this meeting, and there's loads of people on different computers for parts of the scoreboard. This computer will do this part of the scoreboard. This computer will do this part of the scoreboard. This computer will do the wee LED. They call them ribbons. You can see them in that picture with you, David, like those little thin ones. Those are a separate thing, and there's different adverts going on them depending on what inning. The PA guy doing the in-stadium announcement with the big voice saying batting number 3, whatever. He's in that meeting. The A1 and A2, that's the audio tech 1, audio tech 2, the guy who's basically on the mixing board for all of the audio in the stadium. And that's the mixing board for he'll get things on during the game like, hey, the audio, the sound's a little loud in section 225. Can you send someone over there? That guy has to deal with all of that crap. There's hundreds of speakers in the stadium. So they're all in this meeting, and I'm a part of it. And they're just running down a script. And the script, I could show you. I actually probably have one laying around here, but it's like it's a big booklet, and it says what's happening inning by inning and before. And I don't really need to be at this meeting because I only play. There's a couple specific places that I play. Once I get the script, I know where I play. They'll say, Bobby, you're playing the bottom of the 3rd, you're playing the bottom of the 6th, and then you're playing the 7th inning stretch. Which the 7th inning stretch is this big tradition where in the middle of the 7th inning, everybody gets up and sings "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," which is a 100-year-old tune, and I play it, and they put me on the big screen, and it's like kind of my big spotlight moment. So that's that meeting, and that happens, and then I have a bit of time, so I'll eat lunch either in the press box, or I might go by. There's a lot of really great food there. I might just go to a stand and pick something up, and then I'll head to my organ, which they've set up for me. It didn't used to be that way, but I've been there for 13 years now. I've got people doing things for me now, which is great. And I'll just make sure it's working. And I might run through a couple things. I'm always adding new tunes, so I would say, but I don't have a setup at home to really try them on. And so I'll get there and be like, does this work? Yeah, let's try that. Okay. And then sure enough, it's like I'll play before the game a bit, and then the game starts, and there I am playing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you mentioned a couple of times requests and also prompts, but let's talk about requests just for a minute. So what are some of the more memorable, weird, or hardest song requests you've ever had to deal with over that time?
You know what? I never have a good answer to this question. And I get asked it sometimes. I should really come up with a good canned answer to this. People, if they ask me something super obscure, then I probably won't play it. The reality is I don't play a ton of tunes during the game. Every stadium uses their organist differently. That guy that I talked about, Josh, who plays for the Red Sox, he plays a lot more than I do, and he plays it every game, and I don't play it every game. I'm actually only there for the day games still, the Throwback Thursday thing. It's not just Thursdays anymore, but it is just the day games for the most part. I do some night games, if the playoffs or special occasions, but I'm there. It's a 162 game season. 81 of those would be home games, and I'm there for 20 to 25 of those games. Anyway, so I don't play as many games as that Red Sox organist that I was saying. He plays a lot of them. He plays every home game. But so for those few that I do, I'm only at about 20 games or so, and I only have a few spots during the game to actually play songs. And so if you request a song at me on Twitter or wherever, it might be too late. I might say, hey, I've already planned what I'm going to play today, and if I can fit yours in, I can. If not, then I won't. And also, I don't like to play tunes by ear that I've never tried out before. I have a great ear, and I can play. I mean, I'm competent. I can transcribe a tune with the best of them, but I don't like to. There's just too much going on for me to try and think through it and, kind of sing it to myself and maybe play through it in my head and just think, okay, yeah, it's a 1, a 4, or 5. That's some kind of 2, 5, 1. And there's a bit of a modulation there. To do all of that mental work, it's just a wee bit too taxing when I have to be paying attention to the game. So I tend to not do requests that I don't know on the fly. Other organists do. My friend Josh, he'll just do it. Like, oh, listen to it a bit. Okay, yeah, I'll play that. It just makes me a little bit uncomfortable to do that. So, what was I saying? So basically, the weirdest request. So if it's esoteric and strange, I probably will just say, sorry, I'm not going to do that, or maybe I'll fit it in next time. But you know what usually ends up happening is when people request tunes that I've never heard of, I'll give it a listen, and then I'll be like, oh, that's a great song. I never knew that was called that. I didn't know the song was by this artist. I didn't know that was the name of it, but that's a great song. I've learned a lot of music because of this gig and the people's requests. People assume as a musician I know every tune. I don't. There's so much that I don't know. And so this has been a way for me to learn a lot of cool songs, is these requests that I get on this gig.
Do you ever? I'll take this back to my cricket watching experience. Occasionally, I'll watch a game of cricket, and that now has a lot of music in it too, the shorter version of it. And the DJ might play. Someone might get out, and they'll play Another One Bites the Dust or something like that. So something a little bit humorous to go along with the flow of the play. Is that something that you do, Bobby?
Yes, I do. And so that. Yeah, Another One Bites the Dust. Now, there's a DJ when I play. There's also a DJ playing, so the DJ has a lot of those queued up as well. But I do like to get a specific with the teams that we're playing. So, like the Dodgers, the LA Dodgers, they're a huge rival. They're in our division, and when they come to town, I will play songs like there's a song by the punk band Bad Religion. It's called "Los Angeles is Burning." So I'll play "Los Angeles is Burning." And it's funny I'll watch the comments stroll in like, whoa, is he actually playing that? And it's obviously I'm bagging on them. And then there's this thing where they won a World Series in 2020, and it was their first World Series in like 2 decades. But that was a COVID shortened season. So everybody says that's a Mickey Mouse championship. That's not a real championship. So when the Dodgers come to town, I'll play the Mickey Mouse clubhouse theme. So it's been a way to take a dig at these teams, you know. My friend Matthew plays for the Braves, and he plays walk-up music for all of the players on the opposing teams. And he will take every name of theirs, and he'll play some tune that riffs on their name. If there was like a guy with the last name of Moon, he would play like Fly Me to the Moon or something like that. Yeah. Clever riffs. And then everyone's trying to guess what he's doing. So yeah, you definitely do some of that as the organist.
Yeah, that's awesome. That had a lot of fun. And I guess in the same vein, I watched a YouTube of you that looks like the Padres put together, and it shows you actually sit out amongst the fans so they can come and chat to you and interact with you. And I assume that's still the case. And I think that's great. But B, I wonder, do the opposition fans sometimes come up and use the opportunity to I don't know, have a bit of a go at you and give you a bit of a hard time?
It happens a little bit, but usually you just keep it light. You know how sports fans can be, you know, some people can get really crazy, man. Like there's fights happening sometimes, and I try not to even remotely encourage that kind of energy. It doesn't serve me well to take serious, heavy digs at fans. I'm working, you know, so yeah, if they give me a bit of a hard time, you know, that's okay. If sometimes it pisses me off, like if we're getting destroyed and it's like not fun, it's like I may inside be like kind of mad about it, but no, I'll usually just laugh it off or say, oh man, you guys did great. But then I think, well, last time we got you with this or something. So, but yeah, but it can be a bit distracting. And the home fans as well. If whoever's liquored up, some fans can be quite annoying, you know. Usually they're great and understanding. Some people don't really get the hint. And the other thing that's tricky is I'm working. So I'm sitting out amongst the fans and they will want to talk to me. And I like to talk to them as well. We'll be having a conversation. But I'm a bit distracted because my job is to watch the game. And if I miss a cue when we hit a foul ball, and if I don't play, it's kind of embarrassing. It's I'm on the headset and the control room will be like, what's the deal? It's not a good look, you know?
No, it's not a good look. And as you'll know, Bobby, playing in a range of other bands, there's that classic situation when you're playing a gig and someone comes up and asks if they can play. Do you cop that where people actually want to jump behind the organ?
Yes. People will ask that. And usually it's difficult. A flat no with a smile. You have to gauge the situation. A lot of times it's just somebody trying to impress somebody. And also it's nobody likes to hear a flat no, but sometimes I'll be like, oh man, like, what are you doing tomorrow? I need you to come tomorrow and play something stupid that you know they're not going to be able to do. And all they really wanted is just to talk to you and have an interaction, and that's it, you know? So you can deal with it in a pretty, you know, slick way. some people don't really get the hint. I've had some people come up to me and ask, like, there's this one organist. He came up to me like last year. This guy walks up to me and he was like, kind of had this attitude, and he's like, "How'd you get this gig?" They'll start with that, and it's like, who are you? Like, what is who? Why would you ever ask that? Well, if you're asking that question in a friendly fashion, it's like they're saying, "Wow, what a cool job! How'd you get this job?" That's one thing. But he was like, it's like he was gunning for my gig or something.
Was it
like,
Steve Winwood?
Oh, I forgot to ask. It might have been him. No, it turns out this dude like had a church gig. He was like a classical organist, and he just had a kind of scowl on his face. I'm like, what do what's your deal? Like, don't approach me with that kind of energy.
No.
So you do have to deal with all types, but usually it's fun interacting with kids.
No,
that's one of the things I like about the job.
No, that's excellent. And just in the same vein, most requested song you do cop, Bobby?
Well, it's funny because people request loads of different things, but loads of people will try to say like, "Hey, play Freebird," and I don't know how that became the song that you request to be a jerk. I don't know how that ever happened. Was it in a film or something? Because I don't know, but that's something that happens. People say, "Hey, play Freebird," and they're trying to just get a laugh out of their mates or whatever. But and I always would be like, that's obnoxious. But then I went and listened to Freebird. I'm like, this is actually a really pretty song. So I play Freebird all the time. Like, why not? It's beautiful. It works great. So, if they request it like a jerk, I won't play it. But ironically, like I said, it's led to me discovering some really cool tunes. Some people will say Inagata Davida. And it's like, a lot of times when people are trying to request tunes and be obnoxious in person, they're just doing it to impress their friends. So if you can engage with them and with like a gentle put down or make them all feel good about themselves, then everybody gets what they want out of the interaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. David and I were reflecting on this interview before you came online, and we were saying, I bet we were thinking probably 99% of people at the sports fans, the Padres fans, and the opposition fans are probably awesome to deal with. And it's probably that that tiny element which all sports clubs have, unfortunately, that take it a bit too seriously or what have you. But it certainly looks like fun. So you mentioned it before, and David mentioned it before, that you also play organ at hockey matches and soccer matches, and you were saying even in hockey the roles, it's even more integral to the way the entertainment flows. How is it different, your role when you play at a hockey game or a soccer game versus the baseball?
Well, when I got this gig with the Gulls in 2017, so it's been 5 years, and it was a dude who used to work at the Padres, then started working there, and I was like, yes, I'd love to do it. I've never watched hockey in my life, so I had to learn a bit about the sport. Still don't know a lot about it. Not like baseball. I grew up playing baseball, but the game it's similar in the sense that there's a lot of there's stopping and starting. And it's when the stopping and starting happenings that the organ can do their thing, But it's a bit more like, it's also a bit more like, your standard like football match, like European football, soccer, where there's lots of just continuous play. Then you don't play for that. But when it stops, there's a lot of fighting. It horrified me in my first hockey game. It's like, Jesus, they're fighting. Like, yeah, this is part of the game. It still blows my mind. It's just part of what hockey is all about. But anytime the play stops or starts, there's an opportunity to play a little something. And I'll play a little something under a live read. But it tends to be more shorter snippets. It might be more just 10 seconds. And then they'll stop. They'll do what's called a face-off. You know hockey. And they'll face off and then they'll start again. And so I might have just 15 seconds to play, So I got to go through loads more tunes, but I might just be going through a small section of it, which is different than in baseball. If I'm playing a tune in baseball, it's usually for a couple minutes. And this opens up the possibilities because there's a lot of tunes that I would like to play at the baseball games, but they're actually dead boring because it's really more the riff. Say it's a rap tune and people want to hear like, yo, play Still DRE by Dre. Well, that's that piano riff. Blum, 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 blum. That's the whole tune, right? People like to hear that, but I can't play that for a minute because it gets old after about 8 seconds. And at a hockey game, I could, because maybe 8 seconds is all you have. So I get to play, more kinds of tunes there.
It's an interesting difference. Yeah, really, really good point. And just at that broader level, as you mentioned earlier about there aren't, a lot of games that have an organist, and there are a lot of teams that don't have them either. So from best I can tell, Bobby, there's around 9 of you remaining in the US?
For baseball
Yeah, for
organists?
baseball, sorry. Yeah.
Gosh, I
That's
at
based.
the
That's
top of
based
my
on a
head.
Wikipedia. That's based on a Wikipedia article. So,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, roughly, I'm assuming that's right. So, do you guys ever? It sounds like you're definitely in touch with some. You mentioned the guy from the Boston Red Sox. So, do you have some sort of secret evil cabal that gets together and
Yes, we
sacrifices
do
babies?
indeed.
And yeah,
No, we've not gotten together, although I would like to. But we have a Facebook group.
oh, cool.
Uh, it is the Sports Organist. Gosh, what is it? It's an acronym. The organist for the Anaheim Ducks came up with it. It's Sports Organist. I can't remember, but the acronym is Sonata. SONATA. I forget what it stands for. But we have a Facebook group as well. So it's hockey organist, and it's baseball organist and hockey organist and whatever. So yeah, I'd say in baseball there are 30 teams, and I would say 9. I think like there's a little bit more. There might be about half, but not. You're close. I could think team by team and try and
That's
think
okay.
about
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I know I'm not going to take the
No.
time to do that, but we certainly all know each other. Some we've met in person, others it's just online. And so my friend Josh, I keep saying my friend Josh, but I met him for the first time. He was out in San Diego in the off season doing a little tour with some artist. And he's gotten to do big things because of his baseball connection. There's a couple of the guys in REM that had this band with him. What's it called? It's called the Baseball Project, I think. And I don't know what it's all about. I think they might be raising money, but there's he gets to play with some big names and it's largely based on the fact that he's got this cachet as the organist for the Red Sox, and he's great at what he does, and he's an interesting cat because he doesn't read a note of music. He's got a great ear. His path in music has been very different from me. I don't think he's not the type of dude you would call for a jazz gig or just a sub on a top 40. He's not necessarily a Swiss Army knife musician like I consider myself to be. But he definitely he just did a gig with Mavis Staples a couple of weeks ago.
Oh wow.
So we all have these every organist is different. Some of the guys have classical backgrounds in organ. I know the St. Louis Cardinals guy. I see him. It's like he's doing his Catholic church gig, and then he's playing a big Allen organ at for the Blues hockey team, and then he's on a Lowry for the Cardinals. And so, what else does he do? I don't think that he's also a multi-keyboard type guy like that I am, so everyone's got a different background, which makes it very interesting.
That's
we all
right.
have
Yeah. And let's talk about the organ itself. What do you use for a game?
Well, when I first got the gig, one of the things that I sold myself with was they said, "Oh yeah, we don't have an organ. Will you help us get one?" And I said, "Oh, certainly. Of course I can do that." And they said, "We don't have a budget really." Of course, I'm looking around. Yeah, this $1 billion business doesn't have a budget for an organ, of course. But I want the gig, so I said, "Okay, well, what can we have? A couple $100." Okay, so I hop on Craigslist. I start scouring these thrift shops, and I'm learning a bit about old organs that are not Hammonds. All I really knew about were Hammond organs that I have played in my career as a professional musician. So I had to think to myself, wait a second. Is a B3 an organ that you would actually have at a baseball game? And I had to think through that and do a bit of research. What is the sound of a baseball organ as opposed to a Hammond? Why wouldn't a Hammond work? These are all questions I had to ask myself. And one reason is you wouldn't have a huge ass Leslie at a ball game. That doesn't make any sense. And how would you would mic it? That sounds like way too much work. And so that was kind of out. But then I thought, but the Hammond still sounds good. How could we get a Hammond in there? But so I'm sorting through all this in my head. But then I'm looking at videos and pictures of other organists. Like they don't have Hammonds. They have these old kind of grandma organs, is what I thought of them as. And I came to learn a bit about the home theater organ, what theater organs are, and just the whole home organ industry. Which, as we know, if you've been to NAMM, it's the rooms that I never used to go in at NAMM, like, oh, this corner of Roland at NAMM. It's like, oh, why is there a bunch of big old I didn't think of it at the time. When I would go to NAMM in the early 2000s and see, I was not there to look at these organs. I was there to look at Hammonds and all the other keyboards. But now I think back, oh, those were what the kind of ballpark organs are. That's what a Lowry organ is. Organs that have big kind of, how do you describe the tones in these things? It's not a pipe organ. It's not a Hammond. They're electronic, goofy sounds, and they'll have all the instruments like you would have on maybe like a PSR or something. Oh, flutes. Okay. Well, they don't really sound like flutes, but it sounds like organ flutes. And then they'd have beats and things like them in them. So I learned all about those. And so I'm seeing the cheap versions of these at these thrift stops, but then also seeing new ones cost many thousands of dollars. So I learned about what a Yamaha Electone was. And so I finally found this bloke selling a Yamaha Electone. Was it a D80, I think was the model. And so I researched it. I saw, okay, this has 2 manuals and a third mini key manual, and it's got pedals, not a full radial pedal set, but it had like, just the, whatever you call those diving boards, sticky outy, 1 octave or so. Okay, I think I can work with that. And let's go check it out. And he wanted $200 for it. And so I went and I played it at his house. And I thought, okay, this sounds okay. It actually had a little built-in Leslie or just rotating speaker in the, like, below the console. It was built in under the fancy, furniture style fabric. Okay, I think this tone, we can work with it for now. And then I thought, well, we could beef it up if I ran it through a ventilator. And which we ended up doing. Like, I bought a ventilator and I would bring it to every single game, and I would run this Yamaha Electone through the vent to get some kind of decent organ sound. So that's what I used for many years. For a decade, I used this Yamaha D80, and it served us pretty well. It was limited. The tones were cheesy. If you go back on the keyboard forum, there's threads about this. I don't know if you remember seeing these at the time, but of course I appealed to that incredible knowledge base. And everything I just said, I asked in this thread, what should I do? Will this be good? And I got some great replies like, yeah, you can do some baseball kind of stuff on that Electone you got. And so that's what we did. Well, the Electone finally bit the dust 3 years ago. It was just, because I play outside, they wheeled it out every time, put it on a platform, and it sat in the sun and baked. And I played it, too much wear and tear on a piece of furniture, and the pedal board was starting to become detached. So they said, Bobby, what are we going to do? Let's get something. Let's upgrade. And we don't have a ton of money, but they're more money than last time. So what we ended up doing was we took the console for the Electone, they hollowed it out, and so we still had a cool shell. And we bought a Hammond XK5. Not XK5. I didn't mean XK, I meant SK. We bought an SKX. So I had an SK2, and I said, here's what we could do. I have an SK2. It would be cool. I can bring it down and show you how it would sound. Buy the pedals for it. We need a speaker in there so I can hear it. These are little challenges you have to think through. It's like, I want it to be able to produce sound. So we need an amp or something for me to hear it. So I said, let's get an EV speaker or something. And gave them all that info, and they took it, and they've got some real electronics whizzes down there because a stadium is a giant electronics project. So they told me, hey, we're building it. And they built it in this off season of 2019. And it was cool. So that's what I play now. It's an XK. I keep saying XK. SKX. And it's got the pedals and just probably the Yamaha swell pedal, or not Yamaha, the Hammond swell pedal. And that's it. And they have, I don't know what they're using for the built-in speaker. It's not the best, but at least it allows me to hear myself because I want to hear myself in the stadium straight, as opposed to just from the actual audio, which is on a delay and gnarly, and just in headphones. So that's the rig, and it's not perfect, but it gets the job done for me. And it's not like one of these fancy Lowrys, which I'm a bit jealous of. Some of these, the Roland Atelier is one that a lot of the other organists have. those sound really cool. And sometimes I wish I had one. And also I wish I had something with drum beats. This doesn't have that. If you look at some of the other rigs around, you'll see some Hammonds modified. What's the Hammond that was like a bit of a cool console? Like I think it was tone wheel, but it had a bit of a futuristic look in the 70s. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Was it like the GM or something?
Yeah, rings a bell. I'm hopeless with product.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pretty badass looking organ, and I think it had tone wheel, but it also had other stuff. And so I said this one dude that had one of those, and then some of the guys, they'll have a whole Yamaha Tyros. They'll have a different keyboard for beats, for drum loops. I don't have that. I've thought about and I'm still trying to figure it out. I would like to incorporate some kind of drum machine at some point. I tried with the Gulls a couple seasons ago. I brought just a tiny little MIDI controller with pads on it, and then I brought my computer, and I brought my and my computer had Ableton, and I had just a few samples because I wanted to do claps. I wanted to go dun 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 dun, then reach over and go clap 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 on the pad. And that was going into my computer, and then I was using the 1/8 inch out of the computer to go into my radial key Largo to mix it and then send to the house. And I did that, and it worked well. And I also had a couple loops in Ableton, like, yeah, well, I can use this loop. But I never really got comfortable, and it was 10x the amount of crap that I wanted to bring to the gig. So I've never fully gotten off the ground with it. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to do that.
It just shows you that even with roles like that, there's plenty of evolution and ability to expand in the role, which is brilliant. And it sounds like you'll be doing that for a while to come. So you can't thank you enough for talking the baseball aspect of your career, Bobby. Sure. And that ends part 1 of our interview. So we'll be back with part 2 in the next week or so.
Da, da, da.